Good evening, everyone. My name's John Cleary. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening at the Affinity Intercultural Foundation on behalf of Advocates for Dignity. This evening we're going to be presented with a lecture and about a photographic exhibition that is very important to many of you, and given the way the press has been treating a couple of issues over the last few days, something that could be important for others around the world. But before we get underway, let me first acknowledge the Aboriginal owners of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and their elders past, present and emerging, for whom this was, is and always will be Aboriginal land. It's now my privilege to introduce Mehmet Saral, President of Advocates for Dignity and the former President of Affinity. Mehmet.
Thank you, John. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of the Advocates for Dignity, I would like to welcome you to this evening's lecture and photo exhibition entitled Beyond the Water. The AFD organisation is an advocacy organisation that seeks to promote the rule of law, democracy and preserve fundamental human rights and liberties, with a special focus on Turkey and its citizens abroad. However, obviously, as AFD, we will cover other countries that Australians have come from to be the voice of people who have escaped the difficulties and tribulations from the countries they have come from. AFD is a non-for-profit organisation established by Australians of Turkish descent who seek to raise awareness about the injustices taking place, to make the wider Australian community aware of the unlawful crackdown on the citizens and the cessation of press freedom in countries such as Turkey. But this evening, we'll talk about the plight of the Turkish refugees who have been forced to flee to Greece from the claws of the Erdogan government in Turkey. I say Erdogan because it is one man that's doing this, not the whole of Turkey. Turkey, where 319 journalists have been jailed and close to 200 media outlets have been terminated by a series of arbitrary decisions taken by the Turkish authorities. Our organisation is based in Australia with headquarters in Sydney and Melbourne. And Australia is a country, a strong advocate of freedom of expression. A human being is the most noble of all characters of all creatures on earth. A creature that builds civilizations, a thinker, a craftsman, etc. For this reason, a human being is the most precious and deserving to be respected creature with dignity. This is why we have called our organisation Advocates for Dignity. In the history of our world, as you know, there have been many tyrant leaders who have taken away this very essential right away from their own people. Examples include people such as Hitler, Mussolini, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, Mubarak, and Pol Pot in Cambodia, to name a few. And today in Turkey, like these previous regimes, the Hizmet movement members, as well as other minority groups in Turkey, such as the Kurds and Alawis, amongst others, are going through the tyranny of the current Turkish regime. The Hizmet movement members, who are all inspired by the teachings of Mr. Fethullah Gülen, who is a contemporary Muslim scholar currently residing in Pennsylvania, USA, are peace-loving, law-abiding citizens whose motto is to live so that others can live. The movement has never been associated with any violence and has always initiated activities in education, dialogue and philanthropy. The Erdogan government accuses the movement with a choreographed coup attempt on the 15th of July 2016. Mr. Fethullah Gülen immediately reacted, as he has never been behind any coup attempts in the past, and requested an investigation by an international independent tribunal. The Erdogan government never allowed this independent review of this case, and instead they have purged and jailed hundreds of thousands of school teachers, judiciary members, police officers, business people, even housewives and babies. The figures are astonishing, and I will read out to you what's the current figures are. 150,348 people were dismissed from their jobs. 500,650 people were investigated. 96,885 people were arrested. 3,003 schools, dormitories and universities were shut down, and most of these were Hizmet-initiated dormitories, universities and schools. 6,021 academics lost their jobs, and 4,463 judges, prosecutors were dismissed. 189 media outlets were shut down, and 319 journalists were arrested, and more than 700 babies are now jailed in Turkey with their mothers. Hundreds of journalists are jailed, and there is no fair trial and justice in Turkey. 3 journalists, Ahmet Altan, Mehmet Altan and Nazlı Ilıcak, were sentenced to life imprisonment. These 3 journalists are well-known pro-democracy journalists, judges, and these journalists are obviously not from the Hizmet movement, but they are obviously opposing the government, and they have been jailed for that reason, because they speak out. The judges and prosecutors have to follow the orders of the Erdogan government, as failure to do so will also lead to their jailing. People have escaped and still escape from Turkey. Some of them are in Australia and are applying for protection visa. These people are good business people, academics, teachers, doctors, even university students. They have traumatic stress. Some of them started their own businesses in Australia and became taxpayers, while some of them are still struggling. And as advocates for dignity, we will be a voice for them. We are willing to help them to adjust and settle into Australian society and mateship spirit properly. Unfortunately, every one of them were not so lucky enough to reach Australia or other safe countries. There have been many who have drowned whilst escaping in the Maritsa River, which has been a graveyard for many Turkish citizens, along with other refugees from Syria and others, and Turkish citizens who are aligned to the Hizmet Gülen movement have also drowned in this river. Just a few years ago, when the drama of the Syrian refugee baby Aylan drowning was being discussed, now Turkish refugees and their babies are drowning in a similar fashion. I was in Greece in June last year and visited many families firsthand. And, it's very difficult in Greece. You don't speak the language. You may have English, or you may have German or other French international languages that people tend to learn, but Greek is not a language that people learn in today's world. So language is a barrier, and there's no social security in Greece, although the Greek people are very embracing of the Turkish refugees, and especially the ones from Hizmet. However, there are no social benefits at all to any of these refugees who have left their money and assets and everything behind in Turkey, and they have run away with a few $100s, whatever they have in their pocket, and that's all they have. And these people have lived most of their lives in comfort, nice houses, nice jobs, and comfortable families, and food is never an issue. But going to another country and trying to settle in this country with no revenue, no income source whatsoever, is very difficult. Some of these families, especially early on in 2016, actually went through some traumatic experiences. They left the campsite that they were at. That campsite was a site which was, not really an appropriate site for a family who has lived in comfort all their lives for 40 odd years or whatever. And to come into a campsite which smells, and you're sharing a tent with 5, 6 other families from all over the world, not just Turkey, but Syria, Afghanistan, even Kashmir. And you're squashed in this small tent, and it smells of urine and all the other things that go with it. There's a big queue for the toilets, toilets with 20, 30 odd people in every queue. It's just a nightmare. And a lot of the families couldn't handle that, especially the ladies, and they wanted to move out into a resident property in Greece. So they did, and they moved into, they rented properties in Greece, which are fully furnished units. A fully furnished unit in Greece, maybe the worst one, is about €300 a month. But because they had no visa and they had no passport, the Greek landlords charged them double, 600 euros a month. Now, the money they had ran out very quickly, obviously, and some of them were thrown out of their homes onto the street. And many ladies thought about suicide. They couldn't handle it. They said, I can't live like this, and I can't have my children on the streets. It's just not on. I'd rather take my life than to go through this. So this is the trauma that these people are living. Luckily, the Red Cross came to the rescue with 400 euros a month for a family of 4. And then our friends in Hizmet in Germany are also donating money to these people every month. That sort of just makes them survive. So that's the way we've handled the situation. They are now comfortable, not comfortable, but they are in a more better place than what they were when they first got there. And from Greece, they all try to go to other countries in Europe, the European Union, Germany, France, England, Denmark, Finland, wherever they can go, or Canada, where there is comfort and there is social security. And some of them have made that journey, but there's still a lot in Greece. And it's not the fault of the Greek government. The Greek government would love to pay all of them, but when unemployment rate is 45% in a country, it's impossible. So without further ado, I just want to say tonight we have a photo exhibition and a lecture by Associate Professor Alex Morel, who is here all the way from New York. And a Q&A session will also be done between the former Radio ABC national host John Cleary and Alex. And hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.